it's so nice to have an audience, Jordan.
I'm listening.
Yeah. Jordan, say hello real quick.
Hey, everybody.
So Jordan's filming us right now. I'm usually by myself in my basement. And so, like I really feel special now.
Have some natural light here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gary, it was great to be with you in person. It was a wonderful dinner last night. Wonderful getting to know you and kind of hearing you share things about your career. So it's made me even more excited to interview you today.
Good. I'm delighted to get here to do this. I admire your podcast.
Thank you.
And the variety that it is, and the age the age grouping that you do, a variety of ages.
Yeah.
Which I like.
Yeah, we try to reach and we try to reach outside the profession too.
Yeah.
Not just to talk to designers and architects, but to people adjacent to us. But yeah, speaking of adjacent, you're not just an architect, right? You're also an author.
Yes.
And that's pretty cool. And that's one of the things that attracted us to you is the Kid Architect series. Do you want to explain quickly what the Kid Architect series is?
Sure. So it's basically a book series that the goal is to introduce architecture and design and the related professions to young people. And by young people, we mean K to 12, kindergarten to 12. I sometimes get a funny look on an educator's face who says, in the look, how can it be for 13 years? Is it a book for kindergartners or is it a book for high schoolers? I get that question, or for grade school. And I said, well, it's both. And they kind of give me the quizzical look. And I said, well, it has depth. A kindergartner, my 4 or 5 year old grandson can look at it, look at the pictures, and we can talk about and point. A high schooler can read the words and can think in depth of what that really means. And everywhere in between.
I absolutely agree. And what's funny, I was looking at the book. I didn't pick up on that, but I did pick up on the idea that this is kind of like a self-service book. Like you can open this up to any page and kind of be drawn in. And I love all it's almost like a collection of all the ideas of what architecture could be, from the history of it to the importance of it, to the people that do it, little things about their life. And it's this way to engage in the idea of architecture in whatever door you're most excited about, whether it's the people that do it or the places or the details. All of that's in there, and it's a really fun way to explore that profession.
Yeah, it is. The public art as well, which is part and parcel to major projects. The one of the fun things, Doug, is that there's a number of people that we've sold books to who've said, it's for my father who always wanted to be an architect, or it's for my grandfather because he admired this building. And that's fun. And I've had comments from adults who the book was given as a gift. I have a good friend where we live whose mother lives in Columbus, Indiana, and for years and years she did the tours of the architectural buildings in Columbus. Oh, she just loved the gift.
Oh, I bet. I mean, it's like if you ever wanted to make a scrapbook on architecture, and you didn't have the time or the know-how or whatever, or the time to do all the research that you've done, like, this is it. I'm giving it to you. This is your scrapbook, and you can enjoy it regardless of your age. It's so immersive. It's really, really cool what you've put together.
One other fun thing is, Doug, that our adult children are our team. And so we labored over what Kid Architect would look like. Decided not to have anybody. But we did not labor over the graphic layout. A daughter-in-law put something out there for us all to consider, and it's what you see today. It was a hit. It was a grand slam, because you can go over and over and over that. And that was choice one. That was option one.
Awesome. Well, I love the work you've done there. It's inspired a lot of curiosity around you and your career. And I kind of want to get into that. Talking with you yesterday, one of the things that we got into was this sort of like BCAD moment in your career. It's 46 years of practice. 23 years of those practice was pre-computer. 23 years post-computer. That's super interesting. Yeah. I mean, I have questions about it. Before I get into those questions, is there anything you want to say about that specifically?
Well, you ought to see my basement. It's divided into 23 years of pre-computer, all the drawings, all the reports, and then just a little section, because everything's on some things are on floppy disk.
Sure.
Remember those? And
Oh, gosh.
that kind of a thing. So it adds a really very interesting fabric to a career. And so the middle point for me was when I worked for a firm and we added email. They said, we're going to email, guys and gals. And through that process, that was the middle point. And then we had to be taught how to use email.
I mean, what was did you have any fear in those moments? I mean, because we're looking at it, and you and I talked about this yesterday. Yeah. We're looking at this as like, well, the next 23, if there's a next 23, would be AI, right? That would be the next divider. So we're at another division, and there are people who are fearful of what it will do, and then there are people excited. Where were you 23 years ago?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, well, architects are inquisitive. We are curious, curious, not afraid, knew that's where we're going, but curious, how are we going to use these tools and what advantage do we have? So one of the things that I think you'd find fascinating is on the CAD, computer aided drawing and drafting. When we started having, and I work in planning, so I work at the front end of projects. When you would take a CAD drawing and you're in the midst of reshaping and beginning to morph what this project is, we were not getting any comments because they thought it was done. They thought they couldn't comment because it looked done. It was a CAD drawing. It looked done. And so we learned very quickly, one of the things we need to start doing was saying, now look, this is just a schematic. We can make all kinds of changes. And it took clients a while to understand that.
Yeah, I could feel it. Whereas a hand drawing feels like, oh, this is a rough draft. We're okay. We can finesse this how we need to.
And so we did try. I don't remember the exact technical term, but there was a setting where you could go squiggly lines, but that never really replaced the hand drawing.
Sure.
But there was a squiggly line setting. We tried that. There became a press type, printing type that was chisel, which looked like architectural lettering. But that didn't quite replace it because our architectural lettering on a freehand drawing, you let it just go. It's not precise.
Yeah.
Chisel was precise. So, but I think that was also the learning curve of clients too.
So which one? Pre-computer, post-computer, what part of your career would you relive? Like what's the one that you're nostalgic for or that you enjoyed the most?
There are parts and pieces of each. But I think I would go back to the learning of architecture, the learning of being a professional, the learning of working with clients, the learning stage. We're architects are perpetual learners.
Yeah.
But that was learning on steroids.
Right.
That was drinking water out of a fire hydrant. And so maybe that part, it was so fun, so immersive. And you were at a point where it was okay to make mistakes. Now you're a professional.
They cost a lot of money now when you make mistakes.
You're not really expected to make many mistakes. And so I think I yearned maybe for the first 10 years, 5 years.
Okay.
I think.
Awesome. Okay, here's some fun questions I wrote down.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know why it came to me, but I thought, if architects could have a sixth sense, what would it be?
That's a great question, Doug. I wish I could read people's mind.
Oh.
Because are they being polite that they like the design? Do they really like the design? Are they being harsh that they don't like the design just because? So what's the real meaning of what I'm hearing?
Oh, yeah. How can you hear what they're not saying?
Yeah, because through time, we've heard both.
Yeah.
You do a meeting. Oh, it's a great meeting. You get back to the office or you get an email, Gary, we're not doing well. We missed. And you're thinking, well, it was a great meeting. Everybody smiled and they liked it. So what's the real thoughts that they're having?
You just need to be able to take that sixth sense and turn it off when you get home, right?
Yeah. Or when you're driving, you think someone cut you off. I will say the other thing, Doug, that is true. People have gotten better at reading drawings, meaning sometimes I'm not sure they know what they're seeing.
Yeah.
And so we work hard trying to explain, okay, this room has 5 lay-in tiles. Each one's 2 feet. And you see them look up, you see them count, and this is 10 feet by 20 feet. Okay. On this drawing, that's 10 feet by 20 feet. And then you see them, they either, okay, good, or, oh, that's not going to be big enough. So,
Right.
so the context, I think but they've gotten better because if you're a healthcare person, you've been through projects, you've seen drawings.
Yeah. Yeah.
With time, I think people have gotten better with that.
Okay. Well, here's another question. I'm kind of playing off this idea of being a perpetual learner. Okay. Which I agree. I think in probably any profession, right? Certainly in the ones that are going through massive change. I know healthcare design is one of those. I think about workplace. That's the lens I'm more familiar with. And I think about, wow, there's things we did when I first joined this industry, and I'm like, I can't believe we put people in cubicles, or we put people in those straight rows of benching, all 48 inches apart, and they were, or less, and they were, and it's like, do we is there something we did in healthcare, or that maybe you did, and you look back on that and you're like, God, I can't believe we did that.
Recovery rooms, cubicles, cubicle curtains with a track, and every 8 feet there's one of those. And so I may come out of surgery, or I maybe had just an outpatient procedure. I'm doing fine. And the guy next to me is just in excruciating pain. And you're hearing all that. or someone's a little loopy and they're singing Happy Days Are Here Again. So it's the whole notion of putting people at a very vulnerable state next to each other with no barrier, except just a visual barrier that like a curtain.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
I think of that.
Yeah.
Where now they're independent rooms, and you can also, that's where you start. You leave your belongings there, you get into your gown, but you also come back there, but you recover in privacy.
Yeah.
So I guess it's those situations where there was noise. Doug, there used to be 2-person labor rooms. So two ladies side by side in a cubicle in labor. Now that they really were in pain.
Yeah. No kidding.
So I think it's the privatization, the dehumanity, if those are even words, where we put people side by side.
Yeah.
We did it.
Wow. So that makes sense as one. Is there something on your mind that we might be doing now that you think we could look back on and be like, wow, that's one of those things.
Yeah. You're gonna be going through this.
Sure.
Driver's training. Why do we put them in real cars right away when we have simulators?
Oh man,
that are world class.
I know that's totally not necessarily designed, but yeah, no brainer.
So think about,
we do it with air pilots.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did it. I mean, I was on the road with a loved one, brother, sister, mom, or dad, and we could have just crashed big time. You don't know how hard to brake. You don't know how to really turn at that point.
I mean, there will come a time when we're going to look back and be like, I can't believe we drove cars.
Yeah.
Like we had people driving cars on a highway, 70 miles per hour. Can you believe it?
Yeah. So that came to me. Just, that's an odd thing we do.
It is an odd thing we do. You're right. I mean, the simulation seems like such a natural idea, especially with the headsets and everything where we're at.
Okay, after this, Doug and Gary Simulation Inc. We're gonna move on that somehow.
You gotta get a patent for that quick.
Because you're gonna beat us to it.
Oh, okay. Here we go. I don't know. This was just listening to you speak earlier. I wrote down the words, think like an architect. So what does that mean? What would that mean to you?
A scary thought, because there are times I'll be driving down the road and I'm thinking like an architect, as opposed to just going out to dinner. And I'll say to my wife or to somebody, those 2 houses are so close together, and they didn't push that. They don't line up. These 2 houses, the front yard is not in alignment, which it is 90% of the time.
Sure.
Or I'll say, oh, that is just an ugly second story. to a wonderful first story. The life of the architect is looking at everything all the time,
Mm.
all the spaces, but you got to turn it off.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a movie where what was there's a couple movies come to mind. I don't even remember the names, but where they're just there's a whole different thing going on than what seems to be going on. So, but we learn not to have it on all the time.
Sure.
But there are times where I'll comment about something as we're driving, or I'll just say, "Nice massing." You know, I
It's
get
like, will you please stop,
yes,
Gary?
I get the rolled eyes.
Yeah, sure. You know, you have such a joy when you talk about your profession. Where's that coming from?
It's just a great job. It's a great job.
Yeah.
That's a good gig. We don't do anything the same. From one day to another is never the same.
Yeah.
We walk into meetings, people are smiling, happy to see us because they're creating.
Right.
You know, they're creating something, whatever it is. Rarely are we fixing or repairing. It does happen, but most of the time it's very positive. It's fun. It's just a pleasure to be an architect. I don't know how many you know, but we're happy people.
Yeah, I would say absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, we're just blessed.
Yeah. You guys work a little too much sometimes.
Oh, I'm listening to my wife. I know it, but actually the work is a pleasure.
Yeah, that's true. I ask every guest about career advice, and it's one of my favorite things to learn about. It's my favorite things to hear. So maybe it's advice you were given, or it's advice that you love to give. What's coming to you?
The advice is understand what an architect does before you want to become one. Investigate. And we just live in a wonderful internet world, a world where people are doing camps, architecture camps. And I participate sometimes in the Ball State one. And a professor told me once that half the kids who came left not wanting to be architects. And we both looked at each other at the same time and said, that's good. If it helps you understand what you don't want to do, that's important too.
Yeah.
Because that's very sad when someone invests all of money, time, resources, and that's not what they want to do.
Yeah.
And so, so it's about just educating, talk about it. It goes back to the Kid Architect books. There are camps. NOMA, National Association of Minority Architects, has a Project Pipeline series that they do nationwide every year. And so it's just about trying to educate, to understand what it is and what it isn't. And kind of back when we were doing it, there was it was sink or swim, like it or leave it, love it or leave it. It was just difficult.
Yeah. I would like to think for every architect that there is that maybe didn't want to be one really, there's probably 4 or 5 that aren't, that should have been.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And they just didn't get the exposure. They didn't have that book in their hands as a kid to show them what architecture is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So it's a profession that we need to continue to work at informing young people what it is and what it isn't, what it's about. Although, as I always say, it's architecture and the related professions, because we need interior designers, construction managers, planners, landscape architects. It's all tied together.
Yeah. So speaking of aspirations, right, and wishing to be something, what would you be doing if you weren't doing that?
Oh, gosh.
I mean, you said landscape architecture, and it put me outdoors, and I was like, oh, I'd love to spend more time outdoors.
You think we're happy and smile? They really are happy and smile. It's a nice profession. It's a fun profession. And one of the things that differentiates the landscape architects, they can really draw.
Ooh.
They're artists. I can draw. I'm not an artist. They're artists. I'll send you some examples.
In what way? I mean, that surprises me. Like just because, I mean, is it because they're dealing with more organic forms?
Yeah,
so
it's three-dimensional.
to...
It's more three-dimensional.
Okay.
We draw plans, elevations. We do some renderings. But the truth is we hire people to do renderings because it has to really, maybe not early, but through the process, you really want that owner to see what that's going to look like in detail. Right. And so a lot of the renderings are hired And firms have specialists who do the rendering as well. So the landscape folks, it's organic, it's three-dimensional, it's pattern, texture, on the ground.
Yeah.
It's sidewalk, it's plantings, it's rubberized product in a playground.
Yeah.
And so,
And there's also kind of a time element because your building's not going to grow after you make it. But
yeah,
the landscape has different stages.
yes,
right?
and has to be redone. I mean,
Yeah.
over 50 years, 40 years, rejuvenated.
Hmm.
So what was your question?
I don't know. I'm just having fun.
It was what else I would do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still don't have an answer for that, even after thinking about it a little longer. Probably, I don't want to be an engineer. I know that.
Okay.
That's
I know that also.
yeah. I'm not sure I could be an engineer. When I talk to
Yeah.
some of these engineers, they're book smart.
Right.
They're,
right.
they're really very talented. Don't know.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, I don't have a. answer for
fortunately, I don't think you have to worry about finding another job.
No, I don't need to.
You'll
you
be
don't need to
all
worry
right.
about that. No.
You'll be all right. Well, Gary, this has been awesome. I guess this is a chance for me to ask, are there questions that you hoped I would ask you that I haven't asked
No,
yet?
that's yes, there are. Let me think about a few of those.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think perhaps a little more about registration because there could be a young person listening to this, and so the analogy is, I could be a bookkeeper, but I'm not an accountant. I'm not a CPA. I could be a designer or a drafts person, but I'm not an architect, because you become a registered architect and you're licensed. And I bring that up because in the minority, trying to grow minorities and expand our group architects looking like the general public, their superpower is becoming registered, becoming a licensed architect. And that's where they need to strive to be if they want to be an architect.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, over the last 20 years, 30 years, we had young minorities who basically came to realize that even if they were registered, it would not have helped their career. And unfortunately, I think that's true. But now we're trying to increase that number of registered architects. And the hard part, Doug, is that the best time to get registered is 3 or 5 years out of school. You know the book, you know the academic side of it. And so when you're there's a young man that I'm working with his firm, and he's 40 years old. He just is not. He wants to, but he just can't become. And he's talented. It's just been too long.
Yeah,
And
that makes sense.
And so
I'm just glad you called a 40-year-old man a young man. That feels good.
Yeah. Well, he is compared to me. So I think it's the registration, the licensure, the superpower, and I always say to the young people, you control your career if you're a registered architect.
Ooh,
You control your career.
awesome.
So-
Well, Gary, it's been great to have you here.
Yeah.
I enjoyed hearing your story and learning about you. If there's a funny story or something that you think of that you want to share, let me know. But
I do want to share a story.
yeah,
Yeah. So, many years ago, so we're designing a hospital, big addition, and the foundation rests on solid ground somewhere down below. You do
Okay.
soil borings to figure that out. So we did soil borings. Structural engineer designed everything as they should. And so before you put in piles are just a single cylinder that goes down. Sometimes it hits rock, sometimes the friction stops it.
Sure.
So we're doing everything right. And you always do a test pile before a project starts. Well, we do a test pile and it fails.
Hmm.
Everybody's looking at each other like, into our textbooks.
What does fail mean? Like, how does
it slipped. It went
too far down?
too far down.
Okay.
It didn't have the proper friction.
Sure.
This big project, we're all thinking, oh my Lord, what are we going to do? Kind of check our textbooks. Well. So we ultimately find an engineer in Nashville that I happen to know. We're structural engineer. We're talking to him, and he's giving some advice. I said, well, how often does this happen? He said, my guess is maybe 2 or 3 test piles fail in the entire country in a year.
Oh boy.
And I say, oh boy, thanks, Tom. So we finally get that answer, and the client wants to start this project, but you can't.
Yeah.
So ultimately, we get that all figured out. The day comes that we're going to test again. The pump fails. The pump, basically, you build kind of a wood thing, and you put this pressure on it,
Sure.
and the pump fails. And we are just thinking, oh my goodness. So we had to wait a couple more days before we got a new pump. And so finally, got the pump, got the new design, et cetera, et cetera. So we ultimately said, well, what do you think it was? He says, well, I think it was dinosaur dung. He says, I think, and he knew a lot about the soils.
Sure.
He said, I think that this area happened to have a lot, and we just we were wrong place, wrong time, wrong situation.
Dinosaur dung.
Dinosaur dung.
In all seriousness,
Oh yeah, he was dead
there
serious.
must have been like a dinosaur hummus pit nearby or something.
That's what he said. Yeah, I said, oh, thanks. I said, do you want to present that to the board? He
That's
said, no,
hilarious.
thanks. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
All right, well.
we have fascinating stories about our projects. You'd find it interesting that, and that project had some other problems. When a project goes right, it just stays right. When a project have problems, it just problem after problem, kind of like a car, maybe. You know?
Snake bitten, right?
Yeah, snake bit.
Oh man, good story.
Yeah. So
All right.
thought you'd enjoy that one.
Well, now, if you ever meet someone in that same situation, you'll know what to tell them. It's probably dinosaur dung.
Yeah.
Be the title of this episode.
Yeah. Well, I hope not. Hope not.
Gary, thanks for coming on.
Oh, it's great. Thank you so much. You have a great team. OFS is a great organization, and
Thank you.
you guys are just doing good work.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.